Funding is one of the biggest stress points for so many of you. You want to pay your staff, you want to serve the folks who need the care the most, and you want to make sure that you're not just winging it when it comes to money. Those that don't know me, I'm Dr. Lawson, and I help therapists build nonprofit group practices that are sustainable, ethical, and community driven. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in California and Pennsylvania. I'm an AAMFT approved clinical supervisor, and I have my own nonprofit that I started 13 years ago in California, and now we also operate in Pennsylvania. And we have also some clinicians that work in other states like Florida and Alabama. I also have been in executive leadership in large community nonprofits, so I am very used to dealing with multiple funding streams and multiple lines of service. So I can help you with any of that stuff as you start to get your nonprofit off the ground. So in this week's poll, because I take a poll every week, everyone told me everything I needed to know, and that is funding is one of the biggest stress points for so many of you. You want to pay your staff, you want to serve the folks who need the care the most, and you want to make sure that you're not just winging it when it comes to money. So today we're going to be unpacking the 4 biggest fears that nonprofit leaders have around funding so you can move forward with your funding strategy instead of stress. So let's get into it. We'll start with section 1, and this is around the fear of not getting grants. This fear hits hard for a lot of people. A lot of people assume that grants are like the golden ticket to funding for a nonprofit, but most of you weren't taught on how to find, write, or manage grants, and you might feel like you're not big enough or not ready to take on grants. So here are some things that you need to know about grants. Grants are only a piece of the pie, and they're a pretty small piece of the pie. Yes, it is true that there are nonprofits solely funded by grants, but I don't teach that model because it's not really your foundational funding. They're not always long-term. Typically, they're meant for 2 to 3 years. There's a lot of reporting, a lot of data involved in them, and they're competitive. So it's not guaranteed you're going to get a grant. You could put a lot of time and energy into writing a grant, and you may never get one. So can it be supplemental funding? Absolutely. Is it your foundational funding for this type of therapy practice? No, it's not. So with that said, it doesn't mean I want you to not go after grants, but don't think that they're your golden ticket to funding, and don't start with grants. You're going to end up wasting a lot of your time and a lot of your resources. So if you are a small nonprofit group therapy practice and you do want to go after grants, here's how I suggest doing it. You want to go after local family foundations, local community groups, things like United Way chapters, local Rotary clubs, and places that specifically talk about wanting to fund mental health services. But an example is there are large corporations in your local community who are either they could be national corporations or they could be very specific to like your state, tri-state area, whatever. And a lot of times those corporations want to give back to their community that they're in, that their offices are in. And so if you go to their website, you can see community outreach section. Usually that's what it's called. It's a link on their page. And a lot of times you can apply for a grant that they might be offering. These are going to be much more obtainable than going after like a federal grant or even like a SAMHSA grant. A lot of those are difficult because you need at least minimum 1 to 2 years of operations and data. Those are the type of grants that super large nonprofits go after, and it definitely can be a lot of money, but it also comes with a lot of cons. And a lot of times those type of grants are restricted funds, meaning you can only use the money for certain things, versus some of these small local foundations might be more unrestricted funds. So what do you need to get started with grants? You need a clear mission, a budget, and a way to measure outcomes. Outcomes are non-negotiable. You have to do that if you're going to go after grants. Any grantor wants to see the outcomes of the money that they're providing you. So I'm going to give you an action step for each of these things that we're going into. So an action step that you could start doing now in terms of going after grants and getting prepared to write grants is make a list of 3 local funders. And you can do this by just typing in like things like community foundation in your county, or even more specifically your township or city. So you want to look at city, county, small family foundations, find 3 of them and look up their past grantees and then go and search those grantees' websites to see what kind of people they're giving to. And if someone like them got funded, then someone like you can get funded, and so you're more qualified than you think. So go and make a list of 3 local funders. You'll be surprised at how many people are actually giving grants away. For example, I just did this with a client yesterday in Texas, and I'm not from Texas, so I don't know this company, but I guess I was told it's more than a grocery store, but it's a grocery store that's HEB, I think, and they're pretty big in the state of Texas. They're super into giving back to the community. If you go on their website and you look at community and you go under that tab, they have right on there their exact application process for giving back to the community and other nonprofits. So one of the things that they say right there on their website is that they want to give funds to local mental health and wellness nonprofits who are doing those services for the community. So that's just an example of what you can do in your local state, county, city. All right, let's dive into section 2. So this is comes up a lot, and it's the fear of relying too much on donations. This fear, why does it often linger for people? It's because donations can feel personal, and it's hard. You don't want to feel like you're begging or tapping the same people over and over, and it can feel unstable. So here are some things that you need to know. Donations don't have to be from your personal circle forever. You do often start with making a list of your inner circle, but one way that you can make it sustainable is consider monthly donors, community partners, and corporate sponsorships. Even the small ones can add up to really big dollars for you. And when people feel like they're part of a movement, they're more likely to give again. So it's really important to foster the relationship with anyone that gives to you. You want to add a personal touch, and you want to have different, my fundraiser taught me this. She calls it touch points throughout the year, and you don't want to make every touch point with a donor asking for money. So you want to build a relationship for them where you're not always asking for something. But people do like to give to the same organizations, especially if they believe in that cause. So there are some ways that you could do this that are easy, though. You don't have to do this in person. A couple of different platforms are Give Lively, Donor Box, and even Facebook does fundraising. Instagram does fundraising. You can use these to automate the process. You can even create subscription donations where people sign up and maybe give $5 a month, right? Like that $5 a month adds up annually and over several years. So as an action step, what I want you to do is think about designing your first giving campaign and tell a story around that. Don't make it about a dollar amount. And if you're not ready to execute this, that's fine. And it can be a simple kind of campaign, but write a list of everyone in your inner circle, your friends, your family, colleagues, people who you know are interested in the type of nonprofit that you want to have, and then think about a super small fundraising campaign that you can launch. So it would look something like this. Help us provide 20 free sessions to teens this summer. This is way more powerful than just saying, give me $2,000 to provide therapy, right? So help us provide 20 free sessions to teens this summer. People definitely want to give to that. You know, there were some natural disasters, right? In Texas, that was a big one. Help us provide 40 free sessions to families who suffered the events of that flooding. People are definitely going to give to that versus saying, oh, I'm looking for $4,000 to provide therapy, trauma, or whatever. So make it more specific to your community and what the actual impact is going to be. Now, let's talk about actually charging clients in a nonprofit and how do you do that ethically. There's a lot of misconceptions out there that you can't charge clients in a nonprofit or that services have to be free. Obviously, a lot of us enter this field to serve people who couldn't afford necessarily private pay therapy, and now we're trying to keep the lights on while still offering care to those that need it. So, what do you need to know about this? Charging clients in a nonprofit is not unethical. You can definitely charge full fee premium pay services to clients that can afford it. You can also offer sliding scale based on income or the green bottle method. You can create scholarship slots funded by grants or donors. That's super easy to do, just like that campaign idea that I told you about. And you can also do a mix of Medicaid, private pay, pro bono. What is unethical in a nonprofit is only charging premium pay or only having a few sliding scale slots or only a few Medicaid slots. The whole purpose of a nonprofit is to serve your community and to provide affordable and accessible mental health care. So you're not prioritizing certain slots over the other because it's higher paying. So Yes, I absolutely accept premium pay services in my nonprofit. I have a super niche down specialization where I work with families on adult children who are estranged from their parents, and family therapy is really hard work. And I offer that service to not only people who can afford it, but people who can't afford it too. So some people might pay $250 for a family session, and then I'll get other people who are on Medicaid and I'm doing the same type of work. But my pay is not impacted because I have other funds or other funding streams coming into the nonprofit. So it's only unethical to charge clients if you're charging only a premium pay in a nonprofit, because then that doesn't meet the criteria of a nonprofit. So at Hope, my nonprofit, we have basically a tiered model. So we have full fee pay, and then we have some pro bono spots depending on how much funding we have coming in. We definitely offer sliding scale to most of our clients if they're not on Medicaid. We take Medi-Cal in California and Medicaid in Pennsylvania, and then we do a select few private commercial insurances. So everyone gets quality of care and no one feels less than. It's the same service regardless of what they're paying. As an action step, what I want you to do is to look at your client caseload and calculate, okay, if 20% paid full fee, 40% paid sliding scale, and 40% were like a grant funded or like donations funded pro bono slots, could your model work and what would that look like? If it doesn't work, what would you need to change? And so remember, if your clients aren't paying full fee and you're offering sliding scale or pro bono slots, that's where you use small grant funding, donations, fundraising to supplement the cost of that service, which means paying you or your therapist, whoever's providing the service, the same amount as you would as if they had a full fee client. That's the whole point in being able to be sustainable as a nonprofit. All right, section 4. I wanted to dive a little bit more into the fear of contracting with MCOs and like a lot of fee-for-service confusion. First thing is, I've heard this so much where therapists have talked to a lawyer or an accountant and they say that it's illegal to contract with insurance companies under a nonprofit model. That is absolutely 100% false. You can definitely contract with insurance companies because Medicaid, Medi-Cal, Medicare are insurance companies, and you can also contract with your commercial insurance companies under a nonprofit. All community mental health nonprofits contract with insurance companies. So I just want to make sure we bust that myth right now. But why does it feel scary? Well, let's be real. Insurance billing is a different language, and sometimes it's a nightmare. And then when Medicaid is involved, you're suddenly dealing with MCOs, audits, and credentialing. So first, I like to go over a breakdown of what MCOs are. They are managed care organizations, and they manage the Medicaid in your state. Most states have different MCOs depending on the county that you're in. So you might be familiar with one MCO in one county, and then a different MCO is the Medicaid contract holder for another county. Sometimes they hold multiple counties. So it just kind of depends on your state and how they do things. But basically it means fee for service where you're getting paid per session. And what's important about this is that you need to know your rates, you need to understand your billing codes and the documentation that it takes to do this type of billing, because there's always requirements that's outside of private pay. So you definitely can mix this with other revenue, but this is actually the foundation to your nonprofit funding. This is going to be the most sustainable, the most long lasting. I know that that is up in the air right now with the different Medicaid cuts. So I don't really have an answer of how that's going to play out over the next couple of years, but I am not stopping taking Medicaid in my practice. It's something that we believe in, and we're going to ride out this wave of what it looks like. So my kind of recommendations for getting this started are to go to Google and type in Medicaid MCO of whatever county you live in or whatever state you're in, so that you can find out the specific MCO in your county. Now, after that, what I want you to do is to go under their provider section on their website and look under forms and check out their program manual. Most MCOs publicly post their manuals, which is essentially anything that's going to be in a contract if they give it to you. So it'll go through what is the auditing process? What is the credentialing process? What's the billing process? What's required in documentation? Do they allow a supervisory billing? Do they not allow supervisory billing? Do you need to have an in-person office? Can you do virtual billing? The reason why I tell people to do this is so that you know exactly what the requirements are for this MCO before you go and credential with them. And that's really important, especially if you're bringing on associates or interns or trainees, which is what I do, which helps offset costs and also train quality clinicians. So for us, as an example, in Pennsylvania, we just spent a year going through this process. It's a very long process, so get started. You don't have to wait for your IRS letter to start the credentialing process. You just need your MPI-2, CAQH profile, your registration with the state as a business, and your EIN to get started with the credentialing. But our MCO here in Pennsylvania reimburses us $221 for a diagnostic evaluation, which we can do for every new client, and then $112 for like a 90837. And yes, for a licensed clinician, $112 is not that much. But when you're bringing on trainees or practicum students who often are not getting paid or get paid a low fee because they're in school, or associates who get, you want to try and pay them a competitive wage, but not something that's of a licensed clinician status, then that's where you can pay yourself for quality supervision from that reimbursement and still have enough left over for your overhead. So what I always recommend is going into your local county, finding out who the MCOs are, reading the manual, and picking one plan to credential with. Don't do every plan under the sun. Just pick one, master it, learn it, know those clients, develop a relationship with that MCO, master the billing process. And a lot of times that one plan will be a huge piece of your foundation in generating referrals, developing a reputation in the community, and being able to master like the billing process. And then after that, if you want to expand, absolutely do it. But I am not a big fan of let's hire a biller and credential with every contract under the sun. What I have seen is that just results in so much chaos, a lot of burnout for CEOs or owners, and also it results in a lot of denials. And we want to try and stay away from denials as much as possible. So if you're considering credentialing, research your state's Medicaid MCOs, reach out and ask the providers for their application, reach out and ask them for their manual if it's not posted. If you have any questions with that process, let me know. Funding doesn't have to be confusing or shameful. You're allowed to build a model that works for you, for your mission and your money. You don't have to choose all of these funding options, but these are all the options that are available to you as a nonprofit. You can serve the people that you need and make sustainable living doing it. I do it every single day. I've been doing it for the last 13 years. I only work 3 days a week in my nonprofit, and I make over $100K. I feel very comfortable with the clients that I'm serving, and I feel so confident in the training and supervision that I give to my employees that work under the nonprofit.